So the first question, so I want to talk about what you're reading, but before I ask what you're reading, I want to tell you that Why Not Me is one of my favorite books of all time. And I sincerely mean that. It touched me in so many ways, and that phrase has stuck with me since I read that book. Every time it's like you planted this seed in my brain, right? So every time I start to doubt myself or say, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do this. That's not for me. I'm not good enough for that." That why not me kind of comes into my head. Why not me? I think about you and your journey and what you've accomplished, and it's pushed me farther. I have to say, it's pushed me farther. It's had me take healthier risks on myself. Like my partnership with Black Rifle that I do all my episodes there. I was terrified to ask them. I didn't feel worthy enough to be in there doing a podcast. They have their own podcast. I was like, I'm not worthy enough to do that. I kind of subconsciously felt that way, and I was hesitant, reluctant to even ask. But after reading your book, I asked, and now I do all my live episodes there. And it's introduced me to a lot of awesome people, and I'm so glad I took that chance on myself. And it's all thanks to your message. So I want to start with just telling you thanks for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very vulnerable book. Love it. I'm going to write a book one day, and yours is kind of my guide to how I want the reader to portray it. So my question then, after giving you that thorough shout out, which you deserve, is what book is Todd Simmons reading right now that you're just like, dang, that book just hit different,
To be honest with you, I haven't, I've been so busy the last couple of months and traveling and doing different things and just focusing inward on, what we've been doing, building courses and just, so a lot of things I'm reading is design theory type books in coursework. But I will tell you something I revisited, and I haven't gotten this new book. And because you mentioned, my book, and I would tell you where my inspiration came from was David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, and I revisited that here recently for my own personal inspiration. I didn't read it. I think the audible, I think it's a great book, but the audible version I think is 10 times better. And I remember that book hitting me about in 2018 or whatever, really hard, like, this journey that he'd been through. So I revisit, I would say, what am I reading recently was that. And something I've been reading, I put out a different book here recently. It was kind of a coloring book that actually is a resiliency coloring book with self-reflection. So, those are two things. Those are two things I kind of been reading, but not a lot of reading the last 3 or 4 months, to be honest with you. Reading a lot, but reading internally for business practices mostly.
Gotcha. And when you're creating something, it's hard to digest things. You know what I mean? So people ask me like, "Oh, what podcast do you listen to?" And I'm like, "I don't listen to that many because I'm too busy making one."
Yeah, exactly. I would tell you, I've been in a creative mode for the last 6 months. So a lot of it has just been sitting, traveling and really being in my own creating mode and really writing my own stuff and really being reflective internally. So it's not that I'm, never going to read again, but I've just been really internal. Really internal. It's been a lot of internal deliberation with myself over the last probably 6 months.
And I'd say you probably have a lot more time by yourself to think about those things, seeing your late night flights, your turn and burns. When you're in the military, you don't really do anything alone. You're not one owner of a thing like you are now. So, I'd like to think you also have more time to reflect in those moments.
Yeah, and that's a great point because, I get something, I get the comments all the time that, you're working harder than you probably worked in the military. And I'm like, and they go, all the other comments are, typically are, oh man, how do you travel so much? And I like to put that in perspective for people. Number one, not that I didn't love my 25 years in the military, but like you just mentioned, it's different. Right. When I go somewhere now, it's solely because I've created that opportunity. I'm trying to execute that opportunity. And when I go somewhere, I typically, like you say, I don't have all of the other things that I'm required to do. So if I'm on a 2-day trip, I get a lot of downtime. I get to go hang out at my favorite cigar bar, restaurant inside the city, explore the city. I don't have to go to a lot of events before in the morning or the evening or the afternoon. It is solely concentrated on what I'm there to do in this focused amount of time. And the rest of the time is for me. So when I'm sitting in the airport or airport lounge, or I'm sitting in a restaurant, or I'm in my hotel down in the lobby, I have nothing but time to think, nothing but time. And so people go, how do you do all these things and then create all these things at the same time? My time now is just different. My time is owned by me. My reflection time is owned by me. My time to, contemplate what I want to do next is owned by me. My thoughts are pure because it's not competing with 50 other things. It's really never competing with anything. So my thoughts are able, which makes me dangerous to myself, because I have all these thoughts that's just bouncing around my head, which makes me take on like 20 projects for myself that really no one is asking me to do, because I just feel like it's creative space and I like doing it.
That's beautiful. And I felt that way when I flew to AFSA. I'm not at the airport that often, but I had some lengthy layovers, and I had my laptop, and my creative juices were I was killing it with the editing, I just felt like I didn't have anything to worry about. It was a weird feeling. It was just me on my own. I've never felt like that like ever in a long time. And so because of that experience, I wanted to ask you, that particular question. So question 2 would be, what gets your creative juices going the most? Has there been anything that's like really like helpful for you where you're like, man, when I'm in this mode, I get the most work done or have the best ideas? Is there any sort of situation or approach that helps with your creativity?
Yeah, I think, the world, I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but the world is kind of the canvas that I look at. Like wherever I'm at, I have 600 notes on my iPhone, because I can be sitting in the airport and I will see something. I'll see a TSA agent doing something that's really, I think, is awesome point of leadership, or awesome point of being a human, or somebody's doing something really empathetic. Like this morning, I had a great conversation with a government worker about a system issue I was having, and she was just amazing. And if I'm in a hotel room and I see customer service, good or bad, anywhere, so my inspiration is being able to slow down enough, which, man, that's the greatest advice I can ever give anyone who transitions in anything, military life. Slow down enough to actually slow the world down around you, to actually pay attention to what's going on. And that's what I try to do. Every day, I think I'm inspired by 3 or 4 things, which causes me I did a coloring book, because I was in the airport, and I'm always in the airport, and I'm always in bookstores, and I'm always flipping through things. And I saw all these coloring books, adult coloring books, and I just saw them, and they were just basically adult coloring books with a lot of coloring pages. And everything that I try to do is reflective. So I'm like, okay, here's a journal that I write with prompts in. Here's a coloring book that, I may like coloring in. Here's a opportunity to tell your story, like, why not me? But how do I put all 3 of these together? That was just sitting I have 3 things in my hand. How do I make it into one? How do I have you do all these things? So that was just an inspiration. So what I do is, I got an awesome graphic designer that I work with. And part of let me tell you how I get inspired. I have like 7, just to be honest with you, I have 7 or 8 book covers in my phone, which means that they're actual covers to books that I've not written.
Wow.
So I get inspired. So the coloring book that I just put out, I did the book cover for that over a year ago.
Wow.
The first thing I do is say, I have an idea, and then I'll make a book cover, and that becomes my inspiration. Like, one day this is going to be a book.
I love that.
I can see it. I can feel it. I can go, man, it's just a book cover. It's no pages, but that has my name on it. It has great graphics. I'm inspired to make that come alive.
Yeah, it's like that visual is so powerful. You start to paint the picture over time of the content of that book.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make myself a book cover now.
I have book covers right now that, I might not write the book for 10 years, but I scroll through my phone sometime and I go, I just did it the other day. I have a book cover and I put it out on social media. Now I put it on social media because now I'm obligated to do it. There's a book that I wanted to write since I retired from the military, since I heard the phrase, and in 2018, it was a phrase that senior leaders used a lot of, was, the frozen middle. And I had a lot of time to sit with that and go, well, if that's what we believe, that the middle was frozen for some reason, how do we unfreeze it? So yeah. My book cover at the time said, "Unfreeze me." So I did a book cover over 2 years ago, and I just left it alone. So now we have 15 chapters outlined for this book.
Oh, heck yeah.
So now I'm ready to put the book out maybe summer of 2023. So, it took my time, but that was something I made a book cover for 2 years ago.
That's amazing. I think that's amazing advice for anyone looking to create something and not really sure where to get started. I think that's like such a great approach to it. You know, just seeing the cover, that powerful visual of like what could be, you know. I love that.
I
That's
tell
perfect.
people, yeah, tell people to do it with anything. I have podcasts for people who want to be podcasts. I have a podcast cover. I never started a podcast, so I have all these things that are like, I have an idea, but what does it look like to be real? So
I love that's perfect. Okay, so this is your third and last question
yeah.
of the Hero's Gauntlet before we get started on veteran entrepreneurship. And that third question is, what is the biggest difference between the Todd on the day he retired and the Todd that is sitting in front of me now?
So this wasn't planned, and you probably have no idea that this is even a thing. But today is my third anniversary of retirement.
You're kidding me.
Today.
That's
So that,
unbelievable.
and I didn't even know you were going to ask that question. But last night I was sitting in the house with my wife, and I looked over at her and I said, tomorrow's the day I walked across the stage, my ceremony. Tomorrow's the
Wow.
third anniversary of my retirement ceremony. And I went back to my pictures this morning, so I didn't even know you were going to ask this. And I looked at several of my retirement ceremony pictures, and I asked myself that same question.
That's unbelievable. See, this is the power of podcasting here. It just makes beautiful things happen. So I'm so glad I asked that.
I literally asked myself that, like, what about you is so different today than this guy standing on the stage? I will tell you, we don't have enough time to even come up with all the thoughts I had this morning. I was eating my breakfast downstairs and I was thinking about this, and I was going, number one, I am at peace for the first time in my whole life. Not my 25 years in the military. I think and this was a journey it wasn't like the day I retired. I went through a whole lot of struggles that veterans go through in their transition. But I think today I can honestly say I'm at peace. And I've never felt this peace in my adult life. So
Wow, that's powerful.
40 plus years, I've never felt this peace in my life. So number one, what's different about that guy? It's totally at peace. And what I mean by that is how I see the world, how I see myself, how I accept things, how I view things, how I want to move in the world, for the rest of my life. It's different than I probably would 3 years ago. Now, I think I look different. I looked at that guy on stage. I think I look different. I don't think I ever smiled as much as I smile today.
Wow. That is powerful. Do you think that's because you were more stressed or you're more happy now? Like how would you pinpoint someone like what has encouraged you to smile more?
I think I never had an opportunity. I had, you read my book. I never had an opportunity in my adult life. I went straight from something to the military, and the military was great, but the military is a structured environment that really never allows you to grow into who you are going to be. That's a part of who you are, because the environment is not based on 100% reality, because there's a lot of safety nets. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of rules that really it made me who the person I am. But when that's over, who are you? And you can't rely upon those things, even though that's a part of your DNA for the rest of your life. But that's not how the rest of the world operates. The rest of the 99% of the world don't necessarily operate that way. So, I think for me, I never really knew who I was or what I was capable of or what I desired to be, or I never knew that for sure. And not this, I never knew that. So I think for me, that journey for the last 3 years to where I'm at today and the work I've had to do to get there has been very rewarding. So today, I think I know myself better than I know I've ever known myself. I think
Wow.
I wake up and I can look out the window and I can truly see out of the window a visualization of what I want out of life, me personally.
Right. Has that improved your family life as well?
And that improved everything. Everything. I've never had the relationship that I've had with my 2 daughters do I have right now, ever. I've never been as calm as I am in situations. And I'll be the first to admit, when people say that, when I travel, especially around military organizations, and people say, hey, I knew you, we were stationed together, I always pause and say, when did you know me?
Mm.
the 3 years of reflection I've had, it was times probably where I probably wasn't the greatest person to be around, to work for, to work with. I can self-admit that.
Definitely.
And I can probably take times in my life that I can say that I probably was not happy. I could take times in my career where I probably was extremely happy, and it's a roller coaster. So now I can say now that I'm consistently happy is the only thing that I can say. Is
That's
that
awesome.
what has really transpired into me being more patient, me being more receptive to perspectives of others, me being really excited about conversation that may not be in line with what I believe is true.
Right.
So,
I,
and I
I
think
read
that's
one time that freedom is directly tied to happiness. I read that one time. When I see you, I see someone who's free. You know, you're creatively free. You're forging your own destiny. You know, I feel like there's a sense of freedom in that I see bringing you a lot of joy.
No, I can agree. I agree that it is, and I've always been sort of creative. I've always been like interested in making things and tinkering with things. But I think it's just bursting. Like I literally like excited to get out of the bed every morning. Like I can't. It might sound so goofy, and I know people might think this guy's goofy. But like when I get out of when I wake up in the morning, I see that like the not the sunshine, but it's light outside through the blinds and the curtains. I'm like, it's morning time. It's go time. Let's go.
That's
Like
beautiful.
I can't wait to like jump up and get in my office and literally just start doing whatever my brain tells me to do.
That is amazing. Yeah, I think that means you're living your purpose. I think is what that means.
So, and it's just, and it is, but like, again, I always reiterate, I didn't step out of the military December 2019 feeling this way. I didn't. And I didn't step out of the military December 2019 feeling any kind of ill will about the military, ill will about myself or anyone around me. I just stepped out of the military December 2019 as a 43-year-old man who didn't even know who he was. And that's okay. But was excited about the journey, and the journey was hard. The journey was, I tell people I cried, laughed, cried, laughed, cried.
Right.
Went into 4 months of solitude, laughed some more, and cried some more. And if you want to know 3 years retired, if I got to give you a time frame of where the person you see now appeared 7 months ago.
Wow, 7 months ago.
7 months ago, that totally the person that you see now. And I still got a lot of work to do. I'm not 100%, but yeah, it takes work to you got to think I joined the military 18 years old. I spent 17 years of my life overseas. I spent, 26 almost years in the military, which was an amazing opportunity to travel everywhere I had, and gave me a foundation. But when that's gone, you're that's a significant portion of your life that's been lived under a structure. And it's different out here.
Right. And I don't know if it's because I'm closer to retirement and I've been paying attention to that transition and how it can be challenging. I see it and hear it everywhere now. I see it on LinkedIn. I see it on Facebook. People struggling with retirement, not prepared, like mentally prepared. That was their whole identity. I don't know if that's always been the case and talked about, and I'm just now noticing, or if it's something that's just now being talked about.
I would say it's just now being talked about. I'll be honest. I was a chief in the Air Force for a while, over 7 years. Trust me, this wasn't everyday conversation. And to be in my friend group, I was one of the first people to retire out of my friend groups. So I got to see 7, 8, 9, 10 of my friends retire from the military after me. And I will tell you what they all went through was similar to what I went through. But I'm thinking back when I was in, people who retired while I was in, maybe they were having these conversations and maybe they were retelling it, but I didn't know about them. They weren't saying them that loud. But I'm very proud of the people you can take it for what you want. Like I always say, if you don't like what someone's saying, you don't have to watch what they're doing, or you don't have to read what they're saying. But I'm proud of people who are being very transparent about their individual journeys. because that, they're not, I don't hear anybody bad mouthing the military because, but they're talking about their individual journeys. That transition is hard. And anybody who tells you it's not, it's almost being a little disingenuous in my book, because it's you got to pick your hard, not to mean that your hard is going to be my hard, right? My hard was going to be a little bit different than Josh's hard, because I retired into COVID, like directly into the world shutting down. Wow. So I had to figure things out a little bit differently because I retired into COVID, which means that my retirement experience is not going to be your retirement experience or anybody else's who didn't retire during that time frame. My medical experience, it ain't going to be anybody else's medical experience. It's not going to be, we all have our own journeys. We all have our own dynamics. So, I would just tell people, you should be prepared. If somebody told me something very powerful that I followed, I guess, like 70%, but it was luck, the other 30% that was successful for me. If somebody said when I was a young airman, always prepared to get out. And I'm like, wow. What you say? No, don't ever talk about retiring. Talk about when I get out the military, because you don't know when that's going to occur. He said, you might have a desire to serve 20, 30 years, but it's not up to you. Anything can happen in between those. So always have a mindset every year. If I got out today, am I prepared?
Definitely. I definitely agree with that.
And I said 70%, because it was on accident, because I had times in my career where I was doing things for different reasons that not necessarily was to stay in the military. It's more self-fulfillment. Like getting my education was a self-fulfillment thing very early. Saving money was an accidental 30% thing because we were overseas for 17 years. So we didn't have an opportunity to have credit cards, new cars, and those things, because you just didn't have, you had beaters. So we just had, I don't think I would have probably done as well financially in preparedness if I was in the States for all that time, because I would have had probably, the opportunity and enticement to have me a Mustang or to be doing all of those things. But because I was overseas for 17 years and getting COLA, accidentally I prepared.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. My first two bases were overseas, and I got in some bad spending habits because you do get a lot more money over there. And then when I got stateside, I was like, "Where's my money? Like, what is happening?" So, okay, well, hey, all solid answers. You passed the Hero's Gauntlet. You did phenomenal, and I'm so glad I asked you about the Todd now versus when you retired. The freaking anniversary today. Congratulations for making it this far in your retirement journey. Thanks for sharing all your information, like you and your peers, David Satchel, Mary Polanco. A lot of them are very expressive and have definitely put things on my mind now that's helping me as I get closer to my retirement date. It really helped me tremendously, kind of looking at my life and what I appreciate and what I love and who I really am. Because I don't want to take the uniform off and be just lost, and just, I don't want that. And so you guys have really helped, I think, a lot of people with sharing your story. So thank you. So the topic, veteran entrepreneur. I want to hit you with this right out the gate. There's a lot of these out there now. Like, I mean, I feel like every day there's more and more. And if you look at like the culture of anything successful, there's always like a few outliers who like figure it out, like crack the code, right? They crack the code. And then you have everyone else that kind of emulates that in their own way once they see someone pave that path to success, right? So I think that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing some people that have done it really, really well. And now we're seeing a whole lot of people say, hey, let me try that too. But one thing that is like so confusing to me, and kind of overwhelming, actually, now that I'm a podcaster, I've been doing this for a few years, been pretty successful at it. My inbox is flooded with, I'm a veteran, I offer this, take this course, call me, let's set this Zoom. I can advise you on this. I'm a marketer. It's overwhelming. It is overwhelming how many of those I have every single day. How do I pick and choose the legit ones? How does someone like you rise above and do it so successfully out of something that's pretty much inundated with these entrepreneurs? It's inundated right now. How did you rise above?
Well, well, thank you for even saying I rose above. I think I'm in a space right now. Um, when we talk about, first of all, I come from an entrepreneur, family, great grandfather, and I tell people, anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, go for it. I mean, small businesses make up majority of the businesses in the United States. It's the fabric. So when you're talking about becoming an entrepreneur, veteran entrepreneur, whatever tagline on it, I have no blueprint. I can just tell you what I have done in my own journey. And to be honest with you, I'm not being careful because the thing is, it doesn't matter. The one first lesson I was told, it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 people in your space. Then I will say this, I will repeat this. It doesn't matter because people will get discouraged. Someone like you will be like, well, everyone has a podcast. Why should I start a podcast? I won't tell you not to start a podcast. I will tell you to figure out, how do you start a podcast and you become the outlier in the podcast world. And I always talk about this as outliers. I'm like, how many fast food restaurants do you believe that's in an average size city?
Thousands.
All over the place, right? There's 40 McDonald's in the area that I live in. But if we were to talk about one outlier in the fast food industry that we all know is an outlier, and they sell same fried food and the same sandwiches, but they are an outlier, who would you say it is?
For me, it's Chick-fil-A.
Most people would agree. Even if you don't eat there at Chick-fil-A, it's an outlier. Nobody cares about gas stations, right? But you know what I'm about to say, right? Gas stations are very transactional organizations. I'm coming in, I want to pump some gas, I may get a soda from you. But for some reason, Buc-ee's is an outlier in the gas station world.
They flipped the script.
But so that's what I'm saying, that, whenever you're thinking about getting in business, it's not about emulating, it's not about taking anyone's blueprint, it's not about seeing someone and trying to copy success. It's about, how do you become an outlier?
Oh, dang. Okay.
How do you become an outlier? How do you become Chick-fil-A or Buc-ee's? I'm nowhere near a Chick-fil-A or a Buc-ee's, but I know that I am in a crowded field. And I will tell you, Josh, every day I get up, it doesn't discourage me, because my competition is Courageous Leadership Alliance and making my organization an outlier. So what does that mean? How do you become an outlier? How does Chick-fil-A become customer service? They do Buc-ee's, how do I become an outlier? Is to work at credibility and branding. How do I become a credible source of information in my industry? And the thing about that is, people have to understand why you're doing something. If you're doing it for money, then you're gonna fail. And if you're doing it as an individual who believes in this, it's only me, you're gonna fail. If you don't believe in collective success, you're gonna fail. If you don't believe that you may have been this right here in whatever industry you came from, but now you're starting this and you now at the bottom of this, and you're not willing, because when you're at the top, your learning is different. When you're at the bottom, your learning is different. For me, my learning started as an entrepreneur was equivalent in the military to an E1. So I was in E1 CDC tech training mode, which means I'm willing to sweep the parking lot. I'm willing to take the trash out. I'm willing to have to read whatever you tell me to read. I'm willing to sit 17 rows or not even get a seat in a meeting if you just allow me into the room to learn.
So you have to put your pride aside, be humble, and kind of get back in that student mindset.
Exactly. And the biggest thing I see for people who are trying to be entrepreneurs or entering the entrepreneur space, they want to enter the space into a space they have no familiarity in or any past experience in at the level of the space they're exiting. And that is a critical mistake because you don't have the brand, you don't have the experience, and you don't have the knowledge, and you don't have the customer base to enter where you believe that you exited your last space. And I never took that for granted. So when someone hired us to do something in 2019 and 2020, we would do it for free. I did 80% of everything I did in 2020 for zero money because I wanted to make sure what I would offer someone for money would be worth it.
Right.
Your circle reflects your future. We talk about that all the time. I have great friends. I love my friends. But my circle of friends are none of them are business owners. None of them are definitely not entrepreneurs in my space. So the knowledge I can get from them is very, very limited, no matter how successful they have been in life. It's a ceiling to that knowledge. So again, back to that student mode, you go into rooms around people like you did. I want to have a podcast at this coffee shop, this great brand that I respect. So you could have easily went to the BX and asked the same question.
Mm-hmm.
You could have went to the base library and asked the same question, but you said, I'm going here because that's where I believe that it's going to be more difficult and my brand will be elevated. And this is a challenge for me. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to learn. That's a student of the game. So I would tell you that is entrepreneurship hard? Yeah, but putting out 5 books in 2 years. Again, content. The way your content looks on your podcast doesn't look like other people that's trying to do podcasts you put out consistent content. I get up at 5 o'clock every morning to put out content. You can't put out content on Monday and then not, if you're in my industry, and then wait for a week and a half to put out more content. You can't tell your customers, your potential customers, that I'm going to put out a podcast on Thursdays or Mondays or Wednesdays, and you only put out one every 4 months. Mm-hmm. Being an entrepreneur is about building, and then you have to build a foundation, and then you have to build the sides of your house. It's a house that you have to build, and you're going to build that house for a long time. And it's not going to be 6 months. It's not going to be, you've been doing this podcast for 2 years. I've been in business for 3 years. And I'm probably if I was to do, in a military rank structure, I may be a staff sergeant.
Wow. So I thought you were higher than that to me. To me, you're like you commissioned.
I may be a staff sergeant. But you got to understand, you have to understand where you're trying to go. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take a long road, and you have to enjoy the journey. So I figure I treat entrepreneurship like a college degree. I'm in 3 years of a 4-year college degree. I've learned so much in the last 2 years because I've put myself in situations where people who are taking me on I have 2 mentors here in DC, and they both started out just like we did, prior military, and they have very large companies, been in business for over 25 years. And these people allowed me to sit in the room because I was brave enough to go introduce myself, not as a retired chief master surgeon. That's another conversation. And it's mentally, I'll even get into that. People, and we've had this conversation. People kind of take it one or two ways when I say, please don't call me chief. It's not that I'm not proud of being a retired chief master sergeant in the Air Force, but there's a time and place for me to be a retired chief master sergeant in the Air Force. And the time is not in my business. And the place is not in my business. That's not what my business is. My business is not retired Chief Master Sergeant Todd Simmons. My business is I own a business that, we are in companies that don't even know what a Chief Master Sergeant is. We work with companies and corporations that's not, so our branding is not about being that. Our brand is about being a leadership development and coaching and consulting company for anyone. That what we do brings awareness to anyone. So, I'll leave it there for a second. Got any questions?
Yeah, so it's almost like that military service kind of drives a wedge, could drive a wedge, that they're not familiar with it. You're using it as this launching point, and they're like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what are you telling me that? Why are you holding on to that? Like, that means nothing here. So I could see where that could actually be counterproductive, really leaning into that, as you enter the civilian side.
It has a place. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's a time and a place for it. I just personally believe, and I'm not knocking anybody who does it, I personally believe it should not be your entire brand, because if that's your entire brand, then you're going to stovepipe yourself into just one area and why would you want to do that? Because the whole point of being in any business or to be an entrepreneur is to serve an audience. Even though your podcast is geared toward HeroFront, you have predominantly military people on here, but you are actually reaching more than just military people with the conversation, right? You're reaching people who are just interested in the conversation. But if it was your goal to only reach a military population, then that's a pretty big population. You're a podcaster, right? For me, what I do, it is a nail in the coffin, close your doors if I only tried to reach military in my business. It's not a sustainable business plan. So, and for me personally, I want to grow beyond being a former chief master sergeant. I want to grow every day. I want Todd to continue to grow. And I think sometimes when we, like I said, if we continue to believe where we exited is where we're going to enter, you never allow your mindset to develop, because you're always thinking, well, I exited here and I'm already here, so I never have to learn anything here. So for me, I carry that with me every day. I walk into every room as a student. I walk into every room as a staff sergeant. I walk into every room gaining knowledge so I can get more opportunity to gain my knowledge up and be a chief one day of knowledge, I guess. So, but I'm not there yet in this new life I'm in. And I don't perceive to be knowledgeable at things that I never did.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And where you guys have helped me a lot too, just explaining these things, planting that seed, right? We start to kind of stew on that thought, and we kind of start to picture ourselves outside of the military. And why I think that's so valuable, and how it's impacted my life, with me picturing my transition out, is that there's a lot of pressure in the military to be, what you think is successful, right? There's just, you don't even realize how much pressure is on you. It's a lot. It is a lot. And I've taken a lot of that off, with understanding who I am, what do I enjoy. So although I've had a relatively successful career, I had a 12 OAY experience with Global Strike, honor guard stuff. So I've had my share of success. But now I'm free, because I know what makes me happy, and it's bringing joy to others. It's elevating others. And so at this point, what's best for me and my family is I'll inevitably retire, not do 30 years, coming to terms with that, right? Really talking to my wife. What do you want for our family? Could I be a command chief for 30 years? How would that fare with you and the kids? Asking those questions instead of making assumptions. Oh, she'll be cool with it. She'll be okay. And she confessed she wants to settle down. She wants a different type of lifestyle. And internally, I kind of do too, And so just coming to terms with that plan B or plan C, and that might actually be a better plan than plan A, right? Just coming to terms with that. Y'all have helped me so much, just lean into my strengths and what brings me joy. So I'm trying to do that now. I'm trying to be the best me I can be. And when, like, here's a good example. I don't have an office. I'm a master sergeant. Master sergeants, tech sergeants, they all have offices. I'm sitting out with the airmen. I volunteered to do that because I don't want to be cooped up in an office. If I got a little bit of time left, I want to help everyone else as much as I possibly can. And I don't want to do that in an office. I want to do that sitting out there with them, interacting with them, hearing it real time. So I completely changed my approach. Yeah. I took the rank off. I don't see myself as a master sergeant. I see myself as an airman who's there to help.
But I will tell you, we're listening to you, that's success. And and we all have been there. And I typically don't talk about the military at all, but this is not about the military. This is life. And when you said you've had a successful career, you've had moderate, your successes, and you mentioned awards and you mentioned different things. Man, I will tell you that what you mentioned in the latter part of this conversation about where you sit, or, what you see every day and what you hear every day, that's success. Because let me tell you what's going to happen after you, and you don't know. We don't know. No one ever tells us this, right? And that you being a 12-hour for Global Strike, that's a great accomplishment. That's a great achievement. Everything stacked before that and after that is great accomplishments. Those things, man, don't ever let anybody tell you they weren't. And there were moments in time where you honestly, the sacrifice, the family time, the work you have done was recognized. Absolutely. But let me tell you, the greatest success you're going to ever have in the military is not while you serve. The greatest success you're going to have in the military is after you serve. And you don't know what that's going to look like. And you can't do anything today but doing what you do, being Josh every day, to shape an environment where that happens. Tonight, I'm going to have dinner with 4 people who invited me out, and they all people who used to work in my front office. I have execs who I keep close contact, but you don't know how it's going to look until you retire. The people in your circle of people who you've been around for 20 plus years, that's going to be your greatest success, is the relationships you build. The time that somebody was going through something and you didn't know they were going through something, and they didn't tell you they were going through something, but you took time to sit down and tell a joke or talk to them or made them feel human. You don't know what kind of investment that you're making in people's lives every day. That will be your greatest success. Your greatest success will be the airman that you led out of ALS today, who's going to contact you on whatever social media platform that we're going to be on in 15 years to talk to you. That's success.
That's beautiful.
Because I'm just going to be honest with you, we tend to overinflate those moments of achievement and pile them all up in a box and go, this is my success. Those were moments of achievement that you deserve, but your greatest success is going to be your human-to-human contact. And I'm telling you, years after you retire, when somebody tells you, and it's going to happen to every single person, everybody affects somebody's life. And it doesn't have to be this poignant, purposeful. Trust me, you have affected many people's lives. And it's going to be somebody, and you shouldn't ask for it. It's not going to be, no one asks for, reach out to me after I retire. It's none of that happens, right? But when it happens, you redefine what success really was. You really redefine. Did I have moments of achievement? I absolutely did. If you look around my home office here, I think I have 2 things on the wall. 2 things on the wall from my military service, 3. And it's not that I don't discount my military service. They're all personal things. Something a tech surgeon gave me. It's something one of my good friends gave me who was in the medical group. And it's my shadow trunk. That's the 3 things I have up in my military. And everything else, and this is another thing I tell all my friends, we tend to retire and we put everything up from the past. Every friend, I just went to a friend's house recently. He has a beautiful home he just bought, and he had everything that he's ever received up in his home office. And I said, there's 2 friends I've told this recently, and I went to their house and I said, where's your future?
Oh my God. Dang. What a powerful question.
Where's your future? Because one of them has been retired for over 2 years, and he's done some amazing things. He's a business owner in his own right. And I said, where's the picture of this business that you have? Where's your future? I said, I purposely left blank spots on my wall for my future. I could have easily filled this office 7 times with military things. I went and I looked at the things that I have, and you know what I say? I have more than 3 things that I feel. I'm going to change them out every year. So I'm going to go back, and I got them all in a storage locker, all this stuff. And next year I'll go, okay, this was something that I really have a great memory from this place. I'll put that on the wall. But everything else is never going to be more than 3 things added to the wall. It's only going to be 3 things. Everything else is for my future. I have the Alabama's national championship. I have my Nick Saban helmet. That's the future. I have all my, every time I have a new book out, we get a book cover frame. That's the future. My lion represents the future. So we had that made.
That's beautiful.
My bookshelf over here only has books that represent where I'm going, not where I've been.
Wow, that's a whole different mindset than what we're used to, right? Yeah. You go into any chief's office, it's all about where he's been. You know what I'm saying? And your mindset is totally different. You're leaving white walls up. You're leaving space up, thinking about what in my future is going to go there in that spot. What's the next book?
Absolutely. I got a whole wall space over here behind this laptop, and that's the future. And I love seeing the blank canvas because I'm going, one day it's going to be something. It's going to be a new book up there. It's going to be something. I received the award from my hometown. They gave me the key to the city. I was very proud of that. That's up on my wall with a picture of the mayor of the city. That's my future. That's not where I've been.
Did you ever think your walls would have, look like this?
No, I honestly gave no real thought to it. So don't give me no credit.
I'm just thinking like yeah, I'm just thinking about how far you've come, just knowing everything in your book and then just seeing your walls now. It's almost like it's amazing.
Oh no, trust me. They gave me the key to the city Feb of 2020, and they called me, and I was shocked. And honestly, this might sound crazy, and I don't go home that often. I honestly thought that because they saw me in the newspaper retiring from the military and stuff, and the mayor was, a lot of military folks down in that area, Army folks, and they asked me to come home and give me the key to the city, and they named a day. So February the 6th is Chief Master Sergeant Todd Simmons Day. So they came, and I made it, I was giving this speech, and like I said, I'm not really I don't go on now after a lot of people, 30 years, they don't really know me that well. And I gave a speech in City Hall, and I said, the last time I was in this building, I was arrested.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's perspective right there.
That's perspective, right? I
Right.
was like, last time I was in this building, I was 17 years old, and I was thinking about I was going to go to prison. And
It's almost like a dream, now you're
20,
back and
yeah, I'm like
you're like the
27,
hero.
26, yeah, 26 years later, you guys are telling me I'm someone. And I just was saying it in the point of, I always lived my life where, and that's another thing, think about if I always dwelled, you read my book, if I just lived in the past, I would have no future. That's what Why Not Me is built off of. Why Not Me is built off of stop. Todd looked myself in the mirror and said, stop telling yourself that that's not for you because you're from this town. Stop telling yourself that you can't do this because you can't read. Stop telling yourself that you know what? Tell yourself that you can do it, and then go do it. And then do the hard work, cry on your way home from failing college algebra the third time, be frustrated that it took you 7 years to finish your bachelor's degree. Be frustrated, but don't give up. You can be frustrated all you want, and never let anybody tell you you can't. And I know we're talking about veteran entrepreneurship, and I think that's why a lot of veterans are jumping into entrepreneurship. For me personally, I had no issues getting a job after the military. And I had a good friend, a senior leader in the Air Force who is retired now, asked me that question. He was like, it was one of those really honest questions, like, hey, I just want to know, like, because I didn't make any money my first year and a half, entrepreneur, and you shouldn't expect to. And he was like, you were offered a lot of jobs, you were offered, you had some job prospects. I'm like, yeah, I had some pretty good, I could went and work for defense contractors or whoever, right? And he said, then why don't you take a job? And I said, to be honest with you, I wanted to see what if I was really, and this I was telling this to a senior leader in the military. I said, the military, I said, yeah, and I told him this, and I'll end with this, and I end with this part with this. And I said, I was sitting in my house in COVID eating Oreos, gaining 17 pounds. True story.
Really?
And I was, because of COVID, I couldn't go anywhere
Right.
for 5 months.
That was a tough spot for you to be in at that. The timing was brutal. That must have been brutal.
And I just retired. So I went from a really busy NAF chief to like complete stop in 45 days after retirement. Just stopped. Everything completely shut down. So I'm sitting in my house for 5 months, pretty much alone. My wife was going to work during the day still. And I was just sitting there. And one day I opened my laptop, and, when you retire, they give you all your product and they give you everything. They give you all your documents. So I'm just looking, first time I'm opening my laptop and I'm looking, through my stuff because I'm dealing with the VA and different things. So I'm looking at my product, and I open my product, and your product, as you know, for any listeners, all your military records who's not military, and it had all of my performance reports, all my medals, everything. And I sat there for 3 hours, Josh, 3 plus 2 plus almost 3 hours. And I read every EPR. First time I've ever done. Nobody read their airman EPR all the way up like in detail. We just don't do it, right? We read what's applicable to where we're at. I need these 5 EPRs to get promoted. I'm gonna read those. I read my airman EPR all the way up to my last EPR in the military as a command chief. And I was reading them, and my first 2 EPRs were not great. But after that, every one of my EPRs were just like saying how great I was, like most of our EPRs. So you're so great, you're so great, you're so great, you're so great. All the medals, you're so great. And I'm sitting there going, if I'm so great, why am I sitting in this house? And I went, if I'm that good, then why can't I do something by myself? Why do I need an employer? If I'm that good and the government has said I've saved millions of dollars and I've led thousands of people and I've done all these things, then I should be able to do it on my own. Right?
Damn, yeah.
So I looked myself in the mirror and said, I want to see how good I really am. If I'm that good, then let's see. And that's what I told him. He said, why don't you? I said, I went to my wife and I said, give me 2 years. I just want to see if I can create something on my own. Just want to see. I just want to see if I can do it.
Yeah, wow. To read all your EPRs and to kind of question yourself. Is that me? Can I do that? Can I live up to that? Is that the truth? You know, you had to find out for yourself. And
that's what I did.
It reminds me of this is such a powerful lesson in one of the Batman movies, the one with Bane in it. I think it was the third Batman, where Bane breaks his back and throws him in that prison that's like this huge cave underground. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but basically the prison is so deep in this hole that no one can get out. They're all stuck in the bottom. They have their own community down there. They could still see the sky. And Batman, he's down. He got beat. He broke his back. No one knows where he's at. They think he's dead. They have no idea. And he has to rebuild himself and kind of show himself if he can do it or not. And the first thing is he has to get out that hole, right? He has to get out the prison. And so he ties a rope to his waist and he hinges the rope somewhere up high so that as he climbs, if he falls, this rope will catch him. Although it hurts like hell because he just broke his back, it'll still save his life. And he tries over. And there's just one part where you have to make this impossible jump. And then with just the tips of your fingers, grab on and then climb out to the top. He can't make that jump. He can't make it. He keeps falling short. He keeps slipping and he falls over and over and over. And then he realizes it's the rope. He knows he has the rope tied to his waist. And so one day he says, I'm not using the rope. The rope's holding me back. Mm-hmm. He takes the rope. They're like, you're going to die. Like you're hundreds of feet on a cliff. Like you're going to just die in front of us. Are you sure you want to do this? And he's like, I'm positive. I know the rope, knowing that rope is tied to my waist. That's going to save my life. That's why I can't make this jump. Mm-hmm. He takes the rope off and he finally makes the jump. To me, that is just like a beautiful lesson about taking a chance on yourself when taking that rope off and really taking a chance on yourself.
No, man, that's a great analogy because that's what it felt like. I mean, not that I didn't feel like anything was real in my service, but let's be a realist. I knew there were a lot of things that were created in an environment, and I know I know how to, so I was like, if I'm that, I mean, literally that was the question and probably was born out of, sitting in the house in solitude and being frustrated and everything. But I was like, if I'm that good, and I think that's what we don't do enough of because I do a lot of veteran coaching, also pro bono coaching, and a lot of veterans and especially people who have retired with more rank and significant positions, they question themselves and have a hard time transitioning sometimes because I don't understand why people are not calling me for a job. I don't understand why I was not qualified for this particular position. And they're going off of what was said about them. But I worked this position and I'm like, well, not to say that you weren't great at what you did, and not to say that you weren't phenomenal leader or phenomenal technician but guess what? The world is full of phenomenal leaders and technicians. And I said, for some reason, sometimes we can get it in our head that we're anomaly, that we're an outlier in this entire world individually. I don't believe in a lot of individual outliers, right? So, the Chick-fil-A, Buc-ee's we talk about, but sometimes you can, like you said earlier, I'm a 1208Y. But does that mean that you are the smartest, most technically proficient person in the whole MatchCom?
No, I found out I definitely was not.
No, but it's not a knock on you.
Right.
You had a great achievement, right? It was great. There are a lot of great people who don't rise to the level.
I mean, every year there's another 12.
There's a lot of people. There's people who will never get an award in 20 years of service. It doesn't necessarily mean. So I would tell you, and it's another thing I learned out here is, in opening up my circle, I can tell you some millionaire tech sergeants who were tech sergeants in the Air Force. Like, no, they never retired. So
yeah, I've seen that too, where people that were kind of like didn't have this shining, amazing career, they get out and they're just killing it. I've seen that too. And I'm like, dang, we screwed up letting that person go. Like, my God.
It's just like everyone's talent is not built for the thing, regardless if it's military or not. So that's why I say don't get wrapped around, like I've heard a couple of things. I know this isn't a coaching session, but I heard like there's a disappointment these days for people retiring as a master sergeant. And I'm like, what's the disappointment? Like, you're really, I mean, you're retired a senior non-commissioned officer in the military, and guess what? You're going to go on and have a great life if you choose to. And it doesn't, even sometimes in the chief world, the E9 world, people will be like, well, I'm retiring. I didn't make it to command chief. I'm retiring a chief. And I'm like, my DD Form 214 says chief master sergeant, and the command chief is not a rank. So at the end of the day, we cannot get wrapped around that the finale of our life is baked into anything, not the military, not your next job, not your next book, not your next podcast. The finale of life is not built around that. The finale of life is what you keep creating every day the sun comes up. Okay, that day is over. Let's go tomorrow. Let's go the next day. So I challenge people, and I tell people to really look inward. If I can name one thing, Josh, that was easy for me to transition from, because transition was hard, and I had a lot of things that was hard. The one easy thing I can publicly on a podcast say, the easiest thing I transitioned from was a rank in a position.
Really?
The easiest.
Wow.
Because I always knew my whole career, and that's another thing about, we talk about entrepreneurship and we dovetailed off into other things. I started this entrepreneurship journey when I was a staff sergeant.
Really?
I started having my own business when I was a staff sergeant. As a tech sergeant, I started teaching college. I taught college for universities from tech all the way till I retired. Wow. So I already was getting reps into what I thought I wanted to do. So I never had an issue understanding who I was, who I wanted to be. I had a successful military career. Thank you to all my commanders, all the people who ever believed in me for that part of my life. But it was also another part of my life, going to school, becoming a college professor, writing things, understanding how curriculum and learning worked. So I just didn't retire from the military and relied upon being a chief master sergeant to do what I do. I relied on 17 years of collegiate experience, plus my leadership experience, plus my exposure to being a senior leader. All of those had to come together to be successful. Not one thing would have made me successful if that was just standing alone on it.
Definitely. I think, taking steps towards it is really important to grasp too, because oftentimes like we see just the end result and it might appear that they just walked into this, right? Like we don't know the whole story that led to that point. We see it all the time. I mean, and we've been there too. We've seen people, we're like, how did they, I just watched this is completely random, but I just watched a video on the rapper Fetty Wap and how he's going to be in prison here soon, and kind of the story on how he went from highly successful to landing in prison. But what I found more interesting was what led up to his fame. Like this guy been trying for years and years and years. Like his one breakout hit was a new song to us when it was on the radio. But in fact, he'd been pushing that song for like 5 to 10 years or something. It's something crazy. And it wasn't until Drake took notice of it and remixed it. But my point is, I just saw this guy that just was on the radio. He's really good at what he does. And I had no idea that he'd been grinding for 5 to 10 years for that, trying to make that song, known and get on the radio. So there's so much work behind the scenes. And for me, the baby steps have been everything, and I love to pause and sometimes look at where I'm at than when I started, but it's all baby steps. It was all trial and error. It was all what my schedule could handle, what I'm good at, what I appreciate. It was just a little bit at 1% of progress, each day, just one, or maybe even less. And it was those baby steps that eventually you just get so much higher up than when you started. You don't even realize it until you pause to look back and say, dang, this has actually kind of come a long way.
No, I agree. And I think that's the fascination I have with being an entrepreneur now, is the baby steps and the success and the random people who reach out to you now. Like we had a huge company, like, when you transition, like you say, your email box is full now. 2 years ago, you probably was chasing everybody, right?
That is another thing. Yes, I was so used to me bothering everyone, and now it's everyone in my inbox, and I don't know where to start.
Yeah, well, that's a great transition. That's when you know that you're building a credible brand, that people are paying attention, right? And it gets back to all these things we see on Reels and Facebook about, it doesn't matter who. I love that Reel, and everybody's remixed it on Reels. And it doesn't matter how, you might only have 2 likes, but they all watching.
Oh, wow, that's powerful.
And that's the truth.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, you can post something on Facebook and 2 people will like it. You post that same exact post on your story where you can see you'll have 300 people that watch your story. They're all watching. They're just, so, and that's not a negative thing. That's a positive thing. We had a Fortune 500 company reached out to us just last week and gave us an opportunity to do stuff in 2 countries.
Oh my God.
I'm sitting here, I was racking my brain before I took this call, and I'm going, how did these people, how did they find, it's a small business with a few people. They saw somebody share, the HR director saw someone share something we did on LinkedIn. She looked it up, and the title of the workshop that she wanted to do is the title name of my company.
Oh my God. That's fate. That is crazy. Oh my goodness.
So all about who's watching you.
100%. That I just pointed that out myself. I don't know if you saw it, but I have Instagram is so stingy with followers. I think I have 1,200 followers on there, but on my professional dashboard, I've reached over 500,000 people in 30 days.
Yeah. They're watching.
Right.
So, and you
100.
never know who's watching. So I tell other people all the time, people get so discouraged about, oh man, I see people start their social media journey of branding and stuff, and then they'll just stop. It'll be very, and then they'll just nobody's liking or sharing my stuff. I'm like, trust me, 40% of my business comes from social media.
Dang, that's a huge chunk.
Huge chunk. And the majority of it is LinkedIn. And the thing is, we might only get 6 likes on today's LinkedIn post, but the impressions are 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
People are watching it. They don't have to
Definitely.
like it. And for some, and the thing is, the metrics, they speak for themselves. We know we get direct 40% of our business from social media, because guess what? People IM and DM us all the time. And people go to our website all the time and fill out the contact information. So we have changed from, and how do we do that? You got to be consistent. And we are consistent every day, and it's hard work, and it's just hard work. And you got to be willing to experiment. Like you said, you might have bought a mic. Oh, this ain't the right mic. I got to get a new mic. This streaming platform. It's the same with any business that you take on. You're not going to have this perfect blueprint. It's always adjusting, always changing, always perfecting, always trying to get better. And if you think you're just selling, and another thing is branding. Like you say, you don't know behind the scene. Like, I've been teaching college for 17 years. So I have a college instructor background, which brings something to it. Bring people around you that have skill sets that you don't have. That's what I look for every day. Who has a skill set that I don't have? And this makes us, that's the whole point of my company's last name, Alliance. I believe, and I think a lot of our success has been into this collective success. The motto of our company is we all win. So every day when the people I want around me are not people who are jealous because I may be 2 footsteps in front of them, or my thing is, whoever works with me today, my expectation is you pass me. Because if you start with me today and you have 0 revenue and you go out there and you kill the game on your own and you are a multi-million-dollar company, oh man, that only hopefully creates great relationships for me also. If we are all successful, then we can create more successful people, and then we can all be even greater success.
We got to have that mindset. We
Oh,
really
we don't.
do. I had the opposite. I had the me mindset before. You know, I'm sure we all, as humans, go through that before we learn some valuable lessons. But I was very much like, oh, me at some point in my life, and it not only was painful, it was isolating. And you know, the love that you put out is the love you receive. I mean, the more you try to lift up others, the more love is going to be that you're going to feel and that you're going to get, you know. And I think the world is bigger than we realize too, right? Like when I first was going to podcast, I was like, how can I do a podcast? Like so many of the people that I want to talk to have already been interviewed, and I'm like, hold up, like this is a huge world. There's millions and millions of people all around. Like the potential's there. We just need to think big,
Yeah.
and not so small.
So it's that collective mindset. And honestly, not blaming the military, because we all have individual choice, but sometimes the structure of achievement can create these individualistic ideas that, I'm on the team, but I have to win at all costs for me. And I'll tell you that out in business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's the worst mindset you can bring into something. Just like, for example, when I invited all the podcasters to AFSA, people ask me like, well, how much did they have to pay you? I said, not only did they not pay me anything, I paid for their stuff. I gave them a free booth.
Yes. And by the way, I got the link of how much the booths cost. I'm not going to go into that, but I want to tell you, thank you. My God, like you changed my life with that decision, with that investment that you made in us. And that's why I gave it my all. Cause I was I don't think I've ever felt so grateful than you taking that chance on us like that. Seriously.
It wasn't a chance. You know what I saw? I saw a bunch of great military NCOs, senior NCOs, former, current, that were trying to do something. And honestly, I didn't see y'all doing it together. And I wanted in this whole collective mindset that I believe in, I want to say, you know what? I'm going to bring them all together if they want to come in the same space to show them that you can share the same space and it doesn't dim anyone's light.
I love that. Yes. We can get higher with each other than on our own.
Absolutely. And people ask me, you saw my booth. My booth had 2 other businesses advertising their business in my booth.
I saw that. Yes. And I love those people. They're great people.
Like they're advertising. Think of this. We're in the same business. Just think about 3 businesses that sell hamburger, and the one think of Chick-fil-A bringing McDonald's and Burger King into their parking lot.
Right. That's what you did.
Who does that?
Todd Simmons.
No,
I'll tell you. No, but I'll tell you though, you doing that, you showing us that seeing the world differently really is what that is. I can't tell you how many people, countless people, said that your spending time with you and your team and the podcasting stuff was the highlight of their entire trip. I've had countless people tell me that. And on top of that, we're still seeing the benefits of that connection, right? I put out like an AFSA episode like every 3 weeks, and I still got like 10, 11 more. So the waves that you've created of connection is massive, bigger than we realized. And it's all because you saw the world differently. And I really can't thank you enough for that.
No, not looking for any thank yous, and I appreciate it, Josh. What I want everybody to do is also see the world differently in their own way. What I want people to understand, because guess what? We talk about veteran entrepreneurship. We're already in a small class of people, especially veteran enlisted entrepreneurship. We're in a small class of people, and you may have, like, I have moderate success. I'll be honest with you, but I don't have moderate success because I went at it alone. I have moderate success along with other people who also have moderate success. If you see someone around me, they're not here just to work for me. No one works for me, literally. We're here to work together to grow everyone together, because if we don't look out for each other, no one's going to look out for us out there. That's just the truth. And doing things like y'all podcasts to come together. And hopefully if I'm involved in apps next year from that extent, I want to even do that ×3, not only for podcasters, for real estate agents. I want to do whoever's a veteran real estate agent. Let's bring 10 of you in. And so you can understand that if somebody's PCS is over, you guys are now a 10-person collective who can really understand how to grow your business together, because the military population is a very insular population. So why would you not work with the agent in California if you're in Texas? Because people are going to move to California from Texas and vice versa.
Definitely. Yeah, we have that brotherhood, that sisterhood. We've got the connections, to leverage it and to use it to bring our small niche, upwards together. That's a beautiful thing. To seeing it as an advantage versus a competitor, And
you know what? To see things as competition that way, I say there's a difference between us everyone should be competitive. Our nature is to be competitive, but there's a line when you are willing to get on the field and play in a field of toxic competition. I'm not willing to get on the field and play in the toxic competition. I'm competitive. Absolutely, I'm competitive. But I'm not competitive against other people. I'm competitive against myself.
Definitely.
And if I'm competitive against myself, I'm the only thing in the way of complete success or complete failure. No one else can influence that. No one else's success can influence that. No one else taking something away from me perceivingly can be. No one can take anything away from me. My ethic, my worth ethic, my values is what defines my success. No one else's.
That's beautiful. All right, Todd. So we're coming up on an hour here. We had an amazing conversation. It went in some random places, but it was all random places. But I loved every second of it. Anytime I could spend time with you, I really appreciate it and I really enjoy it. So thank you for joining us today. And I'll leave you with this question, because you kind of planted this question early on in the conversation. So we're going to end on this question, which is, what rank are you right now in the entrepreneurship world?
Maybe a brand new staff sergeant who ever been to ALS.
Okay, so what I want to know is, what does Colonel Todd Simmons in the entrepreneurship world look like?
Oh man, I don't know that. Well, honestly, it looks like everybody winning. That looks like 30 veterans who've made $1 million.
Oh, I like that.
And have affected the lives of 5 million people.
Wow. So you're just getting started.
Well, hopefully. But it ain't about monetarily. I've been blessed, I'm blessed to be able to pay my bills, but it's not about the money. Honestly, it's about the purpose. And the purpose for me is I love to see people win. So if there's an undertone of my company of that piece, that's in everything we do, how can we bring more people on to win? And it's all about in veterans. And I have non-veterans who work with me, but 85% of my company is veterans. I like to take someone who met me and say, this is what I always wanted to do. Okay, if you're willing to learn, I'll show you how, and I'll introduce you to the people who are going to show both of us.
100%. Yeah. Todd, thank you so much, man, for real. And again, on the AFSA thing, I've literally, I think I told you this when I was there, I literally dreamt of a day like that. You know what I mean? I've had literal dreams about being in some sort of conference and interviewing all these people. Like, I've dreamt of that moment, literally. And you helped make that come true. And so I really can't thank you enough for that. I think you're a really special person, and your team is really special for making that possible. That really greatly impacted all of our lives, and it made us all better for it.
No, I appreciate it. I love the fact that y'all took on the challenge and y'all came in and y'all represented very well. So it's all about what can we do better in 2023? You got the blueprint.
I'm excited. Is there any final words you want to leave us with like something, what's to come with you, your book, anything we can expect going forward? Anything you want to? So
I will not talk about myself as the final word. I will just talk about you. Hey, Josh, you are, we've had private conversations, and I know, everything in life is a roller coaster, man. We know that, right? But I am proud for you to be persistent and consistent. I tell everybody that in your situation, that same thing. Not everybody is willing to be as consistent and persistent at what you want out of life as you were. Even in the times where the room was not as light. The room was sometimes, and you stayed consistent and persistent. And that's why when you call, I will answer. That's why when you ask, I will show up. And so that's what, you know, and for anybody who understands what I'm getting at is that's the foundation of a true relationship that transcends anything. So I appreciate you.
About to make me cry. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seriously, that meant the world to me. I really appreciate that, Todd. Thank you.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate you for being you and allowing people's voices to be heard. That's important.
It is. All right, everybody. This was our part 2 of the hero's journey of Todd Simmons.